Hey everybody, I'm back with another video, and in this video I want to again talk about the Beatles Revolver Super Deluxe Edition that was released this last year, because now we are in 2023. And I made a full review of my initial reactions to this box set. This happens to be the 4 LP and 1 EP edition of the box set. And I made my initial video about this box set, and I gotta say, I wasn't overly impressed with it. And if you've seen that video, you can go back and maybe check it out and see my original thoughts on it. But I've had some more time to listen to this, and I gotta say, I definitely enjoyed a lot more than my initial reaction when I made that first video. I do think it still has a bunch of problems. But in this video, I wanted to talk about some of the positive aspects of this box set, and I wanted to list my 10 favorite moments or takeaways I got from the box set. And in doing so, I actually made a list. Yes, you know I'm serious when I make a list. So I'm going to talk about various aspects of this box set that I really liked and I continue to like. So let's talk about them. First off, the number one thing that I really just was so happy with and so impressed with, and this might come as a surprise, is I loved the remix, the new stereo remix that Giles Martin did on the song Got to Get You Into My Life. That song for me always just, no matter what mix, all the mono mix was pretty solid, but the stereo mix for that song was always just so odd to me, and I always loved the song. Loved all the parts going on. I just wish I could hear everything with more clarity. And now with this new remix, you really can hear everything great. And especially the horns. The horns are now in stereo, which I think is really fantastic. Makes the whole song just pop so much. And just such a fantastic job that Giles Martin did with this particular track. That being said, I'm not a big fan of the rest of the remixes he did for the album. But Got to Get You Into My Life really does stand out to me, and I've really enjoyed listening to it, especially if you have a good pair of headphones or some good speakers at home and you can turn up the volume. It really sounds great, to my ears at least. The next thing I really was happy about with this box set is that we finally get a version of the Tomorrow Never Knows RM11 mono mix. And for those of you who don't know, this is a mix that it was officially released. Early UK pressings, mono pressings of Revolver included this mix of Tomorrow Never Knows, but it was very small quantities of pressings that got out. And now, if you were to pick one of those original pressings up, they go for lots and lots of money. So now it's been officially released in this box set, so everyone can now have access to it. And I think that's so great because it's a really cool alternate mix of Tomorrow Never Knows. It's not all that different. Really, the difference is in the tape loops. The tape loops come in and out at different times. You can hear a little bit of some different stuff going on. But in general, I really like that remix, or the original mono mix, RM11. And I'm just so glad that they included it on this box. Yeah, so that's definitely a highlight for me. Next up, I'm going to talk about Got to Get You Into My Life again. There is, on the Sessions LP or CD, depending on what box set you have, there is a version of Got to Get You Into My Life called, they have called it the second version, Unnumbered Take, and it's in mono, and I think, I could be wrong, but what I read is that this was just a reference mix, a reference mono mix that George Martin made. Apparently he used this to write the horn arrangement. I don't know if that's exactly right, but I think I read that somewhere. Either way, this version of Got to Get You Into My Life, that's such a hard title for me to say for some reason. Got to Get You Into My Life. I gotta slow down. Got to Get You Into My Life. This version of it, this second version, is so amazing. It's so different from the release version. It uses the same backing track, so the drums are the same, and a lot of the instrumentation is the same, but Paul's lead vocal is different, and there are backing vocals from John, Paul, and George that are really cool. And the main thing that I really like about this version is you can hear George Harrison playing like fuzz guitar of the actual horn lines. So, and of course the horn lines aren't there yet because this is before the horns were added, but you can hear him playing those parts, and it's just really, really cool and very, very different from the release version that we're all used to. And to me, this is hands down my favorite part of the sessions disc on this box set. It's so cool, and yeah, really, really fantastic. And you know, the thing I think is interesting is I wonder if George Harrison just came up with those lines himself, or if those were lines that they all went over together and wrote the specific lines knowing they were going to be horn parts. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever really know the answer to that. Part of me likes to think that George came up with those lines, and that's what they based the horn parts off of, which I think would be very, very cool and very possible because George came up with so many memorable guitar licks and just ideas within the Beatles catalog. So it would make sense if he did come up with that. So anyway, really, really like that version of Got to Get Into My Life. The next thing I really, really liked, or next song selection from the sessions, is the full take of Dr. Robert. So upon first listen to Dr. Robert on here from the sessions disc, it sounds like it's just the regular version that we're all used to hearing, except about 1 minute and I think it's like 1 minute and 15 seconds or something like that. I could be wrong at the time. But about 1 minute into the song, when it gets to the well, well, well part, it starts to sound really, really different, including like Ringo plays the drum pattern, the groove, right through the well, well, well part, and John and Paul sing it a bit different, and it goes on for about a minute and maybe just about a minute of part of the song that just sounds very, very different. So what happened was when they finally released the version of Dr. Robert that we all know and love on Revolver, they edited out that part and did a really, really nice edit where you couldn't really even tell that it had been edited. But now we have the full take and you can hear what they took out. Now, I think what they took out was the right thing to do because it is a little bit loose and it doesn't really flow, and it just seems like it's a little bit repetitious maybe. And actually, if you read in the book, which I think the book in here, by the way, is great as well, in the book they talk about how John says in one of the outtakes, or after they'd done the backing track for Dr. Robert, he says, "Oh, we played like an extra bridge or something." I don't know if he says it or Paul says it or one of them says it. They played an extra bridge, so they knew right away that it was a mistake and that they were going to edit it out later. But it's cool to have this full take of Dr. Robert, and if you're not used to hearing the full take, it really does kind of mess with your mind. I remember when I first listened to it, and I hadn't read the booklet yet, I was wondering, what's going on here? Is this like a weird remix that Giles Martin has done where he's kept the drums in or something and changed the vocals? But no, it's actually just the full take of Dr. Robert, and definitely a highlight of this box set. Speaking of highlights, another big highlight. This is number 5 on my list here of my 10 favorite moments from the box set. And this is the newly discovered, or at least discovered a recording that the fans didn't know about, that I certainly didn't know about. It's John and Paul's songwriting. They call it the songwriting tape for Yellow Submarine. And you get the whole songwriting tape is fantastic, but my favorite part of it is just when John is working out the intro to Yellow Submarine. First of all, I always thought Yellow Submarine was pretty much a Paul composition, and I didn't think John had much input into it. As it turns out, it seems like John had a lot of input into it, and the verses are clearly John's as far as the melody and the chord structure and all that kind of stuff. And you can hear John working it out on this demo version, and it's so different than the released Yellow Submarine that we all know and love. It's way more downbeats, melancholy, and just very, very, very John-like. And I think I've heard or I read someone, maybe another YouTube person talking about it. Sorry if I'm not giving you credit here, but they mentioned that it almost sounds like a Plastic Ono Band outtake or something, and that's so very true. It's just a very, very cool thing to hear John working out Yellow Submarine. And then of course you get the further into the tape, Paul shows up and they work on it together, and it just starts to take the shape of the Yellow Submarine that we all know. So that's a very, very cool moment and a very unexpected moment. And one of the moments that I think makes these box sets, these super deluxe editions that the Beatles have put out, worth having. There's always like one or two of these big moments, I call them big moments, in these box sets. Like with the Sgt. Pepper box set, I remember like the big moment I thought was really interesting was the outtake of Getting Better. For me, that was just so interesting to hear that, because I didn't know there were outtakes for that song. So that was very cool. Another thing was on like the White Album, hearing the version of Good Night where all four of the Beatles are singing together. That was very cool. So there's always these cool little moments that are just big surprises that the fans didn't even know existed. So very cool to have stuff like that. Next up, this is number 6, and all I wrote was just the mono LP. The fact that they included the original mono mix of Revolver in this box set, and it's on vinyl, is, I think, so fantastic. And it's something they should have been doing all along with all of these super deluxe editions. They should always include, in my opinion, a vinyl pressing of the original mono mix if it's available. And they really did it fantastic in this box. I talked about it in my original Revolver video, or Super Deluxe video, where I talked about it. And I do think it sounds just a tiny bit better even than the actual the mono remaster that came out from the mono box set. I think that was in 2014, I believe, or 2012 maybe. 2012-14. I always get those dates mixed up. Anyway, around that time period, the white mono box set. It sounds, I think, maybe even better than that, the one in here, than that one. And I love that pressing as well. So I think it's so great they included it here, and it sounds amazing. If you've never heard the mono version, the mono mix of Revolver on vinyl, it makes this box set worth the price of admission alone, in my opinion. So fantastic. I do wish they would have included the sleeve with the flat back, the fold back flaps like the original UK monos had, but that's being nitpicky, I guess. Moving on. Number 7. This comes from the book, the great book that's included in this box set. This is maybe something that other people have known, but I was never aware of this. Reading in the book that George is playing bass on Good Day Sunshine was a revelation for me. It's not a complicated bass line, but it's a really effective bass line. And I think George, with the release of these box sets, it's coming out more and more that George did play occasional bass on Beatles songs that I never knew he was playing bass on. And I'm always impressed by his bass playing. Like he, for example, played bass on Oh Darling from Abbey Road. I think his bass is great on that. He also plays bass on Golden Slumbers. And now we know he plays bass on Good Day Sunshine. So it's just interesting to, and I think he plays bass on Maxwell Silverhammer as well. He was a very, very, just a great musician, obviously, that goes without saying. But the fact that he played such strong bass, and in a band where he was with arguably probably the best bass player of the 1960s, well, Paul was probably right behind James Jamerson and Carol Kay. They were probably all tied as like a 3-way tie for really creative and innovative bass players. But the fact that George was able to hold his own on bass within the Beatles just shows how great a musician he was. So it's cool to know that he played bass on Good Day Sunshine. I'd be curious to know in the comments, by the way, is that something that everyone's already known this whole time, that George played bass on Good Day Sunshine? It was definitely something that took me by surprise when I was reading the booklet. Next up, speaking of the book, this is number 8 for me. I love all the photos of the original tape boxes, the session tape boxes, and they include a lot in here. And I really, really love that. That stuff is just endlessly fascinating to me, and it's just, I could just stare at that for hours while I'm listening to the sessions and to the actual album. So it's so cool to look at those original tape boxes, and I hope someday actually they release maybe a limited edition book or something it's just a book full of all of the Beatles session tape boxes. That would be an amazing, amazing book. Apple, if you're listening to me, you can have that idea for free. So yes, I love the photos of the tape boxes, and they're very, very cool. And number 9, this one was one that I was anticipating with the announcement of this box set. I was hoping, like, are they going to finally solve the mystery of, is Paul playing bass on She Said, She Said, or is George playing bass, or what happened with that whole thing? And now, with this box set, we kind of now have an answer, at least partially an answer. So we get take 15, which is a backing track rehearsal of She Said, She Said, and you can definitely hear Paul on the session. You hear his voice, and he's definitely playing bass. So we definitely know he was there, and I think my theory is he's definitely playing bass on the backing track that's used for the album version of She Said, She Said. But I think there were additional bass overdubs, maybe done by George, that to just kind of fill some parts out. So I think the mystery has been solved, that we know Paul is on She Said, She Said playing bass, but I think he's only playing on the backing track, and then everything else, all the overdubs and everything else, like the vocals and extra guitars and stuff, are John and George working together with Ringo, of course. So I love that they did include a version of She Said, She Said down here, like the early backing track rehearsal take, because it definitely helped solve that Paul mystery. And last but not least, one of my last favorite bit on this box set, I love the outtakes of Love You Too, the George song, especially hearing Paul's harmony that he was working on for that song that they ended up not using on the final mix of Love You Too. It's cool to hear Paul's harmony. It's cool to know what they may have done after some overdubs. Maybe they would have turned it into like a 3-part harmony with John in there as well. Would have made it kind of interesting. But I think in the end, of course, they made the right decision, just having George be singing on it. But it's interesting to hear Paul's harmony on that. And also, I love that they included George's like take 1, where he's just playing acoustic guitar, because you can really get a better idea of how George wrote the song, and just how he knew in his head how he wanted the song to sound. Because right from that early take, it still sounds like the finished version of the song. The structure's all there. So I really enjoyed those early versions of Love You Too included on this box set. So those are my favorite moments from this box set. And like I said in my original video, there are some issues with this box set that I know a lot of people are still talking about, and I still have issues with it as well. But overall, I've really learned to like it a lot more since spending some more time with it. And I also should say that I went out and I got the CD version of this, the 2 CD version, which has the full remix of the stereo remix of the album, and then also like a condensed version of the sessions on disc 2. And it sounded really, really good, and I think I enjoyed it even a little bit more on CD than I have with the vinyl release. And I don't usually, I'm usually strictly a vinyl guy when it comes to how I like to listen to my music. But for some reason, I really did enjoy the CD version of the remix of the album. So yeah, I don't have any regrets though about getting this 4 LP plus the 1 EP version of this box. I don't have any regrets about not getting the CD version of it. I just think that compared to the other Super Deluxe editions that have been released, this one will definitely be pretty low on my list of as far as the ones that are my favorites. But I still really, really like it. And I'd love to know in the comments below, what are some of your favorite moments? Did I not mention a moment that you think is just so great from this box set? I'd love to hear in the comments below what you think, and if your opinion has changed about this box set with the more time you've had with it, because that certainly is true for me. Anyway, that's it for now, and more videos to come. Hope you're all doing well, and take care, and bye for now.